Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we have an interesting guitar that often gets called a reissue, despite not necessarily being a reissue. Today we talk about the lesser-known Gibson shape known as the RD. What does RD stand for? What does it look like? Let's get one of those out of the way first by opening the case. It's kind of like a weird blending between an Explorer and a Firebird, with just borrowing elements from everything. Like the original run RDs actually had some other quirky specs that we'll learn about today. But here we go. This is from 2010. It is a modern day tribute take on the original Gibson RDs. So before we get too far here, let's go ahead and learn about the original RDs. These bad boys were first introduced in 1977. The 6-string electric guitars actually came in at least 3 versions. You had the standard, the custom, and the artist. They were called the research and development model because this was a time where Gibson owned Moog. And synthesizers were big at this time, so Gibson thought, okay, let's take something that we own, slap it in one of our guitars, and make it interesting. So thus birthed the Artist series of Gibson. So you've got the RD Artist, there's the Les Paul Artist, you have some runoff models that used up parts like the Sonics Artist, but they had anywhere between 2 and 3 switches on them that did different things to your tone. And it also required the whole guitar to get routed up the backside to have these giant Moog boards in them. But not all RDs had that, only the custom and the artist had them. Whereas the standard was just kind of normal, but they also had base models within this lineup that were done up in artist and more standard configurations. Now what made these original RDs so interesting is the fact that they actually borrowed a Fender scale length of 25.5 inches. Up until 1979 though, then they switched them back down to the Gibson 24 3/4 inch scale length. But the bass models, most Gibson basses are around 30 inches. Then you've got your longer Thunderbirds, but the RD bass model actually measures 34.5 inch for its scale length. So that kind of made them interesting. Between all the models, you could find maple fretboards, rosewood fretboards, ebony fretboards, the variety of inlay. These things lasted until the early 80s when they also introduced CMT versions of these curly maple tops in both bass and guitar format. But then they just kind of disappeared after that. Were they a big hit? Not necessarily, but they were there. They have a cult following nowadays. But these things just dropped off the face of the earth. Until, as far as I'm aware, in the Guitar of the Week series, you can check out this video if you need to learn about all of them. That was in 2007. They reissue one of these in a silver burst finish. Now, we'll review one of these one day to get more of the nitty-gritty specs and details. But that was the start of bringing more RDs back, because the next time was circa 2009 till about 2011. And that's the one we're going to talk about today. Then later on, they also brought back the artist, but with like gem electronics within it instead of the whole Moog board stuff. So now let's focus on this. From what I read online, apparently these started life as Japan exclusives, but then they started to spread across the world. I don't think Gibson made too many of these things, but I've never seen like official numbers. But the original RDs were made of maple, and what makes these things so interesting and the fact that you can't really call them a reissue is the fact that they're straight up mahogany. The body shape isn't exactly right. It really just comes down to a different contour of the body, your output jack placement, kinds of pickups that you have in here. So it's not really good to judge this as a reissue because it's more so just like a tribute. They wanted it to be different but still utilize and bring back this weird RD shape. So we're going to just appreciate this thing for what it is rather than bashing it the entire time for not being an exact replica of the 70s reissue. So to learn more about this one, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the new style Gibson RD, let's go ahead and take a look in here, starting with our pickups. Our neck pickup is one of the Rhythm Pro burst buckers. Then naturally in our bridge position, we find the Lead Pro burst bucker. As far as our readings go within the circuit, 7.88 k ohms in the bridge position, neck position 7.4, and the middle position for fun, we get 3.81 k ohms. As far as the pickup cavities themselves, this is what it looks like. Typical Henry J era looking cavities, not the smoothest in the world, but they get the job done and it's all painted over black, so if there were any markings on that at one point in time, we can no longer read them. I told you earlier that there were some body differences between these newer reissue style. I mean, it's really not even fair to call these things exact reissues because it's more so just taking the RD body shape and modernizing it, because the specs really aren't exact for any model because this is a mahogany body, whereas the vintage ones were mainly maple. But a huge difference right here actually comes into the fin carve. The older 70s ones, they actually have quite a bit of a contour right here that makes this a much softer edge. Whereas what they did on these newer style ones, they just kind of made it like an Explorer, really. Like they could have even bound these if they wanted to because they've got such a sharp edge right here. And something else you're going to notice is these do not have an output jack on the front like the old ones. It's on the side. And not having this additional carving right here probably makes the body just a little bit thicker, at least in that area. So that actually makes these 2000s era ones interesting because if you just love Gibson RDs, you could technically, own this and a vintage one because they're a little bit different from each other. Obviously your pickups are a lot different, but as far as like your bridge tailpiece, those will be about the same. It's just modern manufacturer API branded versus the Schaller made in Germany style that the originals would have had. As far as our controls, it appears to be 2 volumes and a tone, with that one being the neck volume and this one being the bridge volume and this being the master tone. And then these things just look extra goofy without a pickguard on them, but I took that off so you guys could see. Here's what this style pickguard looks like. It looks like we got 4-ply black, so kind of Les Paul custom-esque in style. Now, at one point in time, this guitar actually had a sticker on it right here. And if you go back to when I first unboxed this, probably a good like 7 months or so ago, you could actually see some of the sticker residue. I was able to get that off, but if you get it in the light just right, you can still see the outline of it. It was like a shield sticker. You can kind of see it right there. I'm sure the blacklight test will show it even more clearly. So don't put stickers on guitars unless you want it to always be on there. Because you can take the sticker off the guitar, but its mark will always be there, even if it is only visible under UV light. So, mahogany body, likely a couple of pieces, kind of hard to tell. If you shine this in the light, you actually can see the wood grain of the mahogany body right here, but they do such a good job of matching that, it'd be too hard to see a seam line. But it wouldn't surprise me if there's at least 3 pieces on here. And then this has a mahogany neck with the rosewood fretboard. This has 22 medium jumbo style frets, so the frets might be slightly larger than what you would find on a vintage one. I did see some conflicting information online about the scale length, but no, this is the regular Gibson 24 3/4 inch. But no binding or anything like that, just acrylic dot inlays, nothing too fancy here. Our frets are now in great shape. I polished them up. I get a nut width of 1.71 inches. That increases to 2.09 by the 12th. First fret neck depth is 0.89. That increases to 1.01 by the 12th. Here's what the neck looks like at the first fret and the 12th fret. So it's a rounded neck profile, and it gets a little bit beefier up here. As far as our headstock goes, nothing too fancy going on up here. You just have the Gibson mother of pearl logo. Our truss rod is looking to be in healthy shape, and the cover is just blank. Now moving on to the back side. So you got the same phenomenon on the back as you saw on the front. You can see all of the wood grain if you get it in the light. And I even took a second to really look for any seam lines. Sometimes they're very obvious, but this one, it must be very well matched, or I really doubt it's a one-piece body, but I mean, I suppose. Got a strap button at the heel and one down here directly in the center. It's not offset like on a Firebird. But this is probably the true reason why we have a side output jack on these, is so they could utilize a Les Paul style control layout. But you just have Gibson branded pots wired up in their traditional setup with a toggle switch in here. And we do have at least a little bit of a comfort carve right here along the mahogany body. I'd say the widest part of the body is just a little bit under 11.5 inches. Then the widest part is about 15 inches. Whereas the body itself, not including the neck, is about 19. And if anybody has an original RD to compare this to, it's about 1 3/4 inches thick. As far as the condition goes on this one, it's in relatively clean shape. You've got a couple of scratches, but I also took some time to clean this one up. Fun bonus, this one actually still has the plastic coating over top of the backplate. Then for the neck, you've got some scratches here as well, but nothing too crazy, just a little bit of player's wear. And that moves us to the backside of the headstock. For some reason, the screws are extra rusty on the tuners. Not sure what that's about. But anyways, our serial number dates it to 2010, 260th day of the year, initial batch, 441st guitars stamped that particular day. But now it's time for our blacklight test. Let's see, does the sticker show up? Yeah, you can bet your butt it does. So some sort of a shield or something. The story behind that is he said his son or daughter, I forget which, he didn't realize that they had put the sticker on the guitar and it just kind of sat there in its case. Because besides a few scratches, maybe a few light impressions like you can see right there, I mean, this is an extra clean example. So one sticker there, our headstock checks out. I don't see anything questionable on the back. And our neck also looks the way I would expect to see. All said and done, this one weighs 8 pounds 12 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. Right before the demo, I noticed when I put this on a strap, all of a sudden this neck feels really big. I would describe this one as a full-feeling 50s neck once you have it on the strap. Which is another interesting fact because most of the vintage RDs, they're a little bit slimmer, so that gives you something a little bit different if you didn't like the original specs offered. Also, this doesn't have a volute on it at all, which if you're not familiar, that's that little bump on the back of the headstock. So that's another different spec. But let's go ahead and grab some clean tones out of this through the Marshall Blues Breaker, starting with our neck pickup. An interesting guitar. I find the neck pickup is like almost middle pickup like. It has a lot of chime to it. Still maintaining a lot of that bottom end, but then your middle position just amplifies that even more. And we give our bridge pickup a try, same stuff. Alright, let's go ahead and give a little bit of dirt a try. Now that we know all about this 2010 RD Standard, what are my final thoughts on this thing? It's just really different. I mean, if you're looking for an exact replica of a 70s one, no. These reissues are definitely not it in that aspect. But if you like the RD shape, but you're looking for something just a little bit more modern, I think that's where these things truly shine. There's nothing about this that's really a 70s RD, but variety is the spice of life, so I'm glad it exists. So I think this guitar is best suited towards somebody who likes the quirkiness of the RD shape, but needs a little bit of a chunkier neck. That's where this thing really excels. I will say playing this one feels a little bit boxier than the 70s ones. I really don't understand why they did away with the contour carve right there. That's one of my favorite features of an RD. So Troglodytes, if you're interested in being the next owner of this demo piece, you can check it out on my website or on Reverb. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow. Take care.